There you go. Go for it.
Okay, I'll go ahead and get started. I'm going to tie a humpy this morning, but I want to do it maybe a little bit differently, but just so everyone knows, I do fish with humpies, and the reason I fish with humpies basically is because they're made with deer hair. So that's why I got into it. If you want to see my box when we're done, you can. You're going to find there's some deer hair salmon eggs in here also that work really, really well. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to tie the fly on basically a deer hair stinger hook to start off with. And obviously it's bigger than a normal dry fly, but the reason I want to do this is so you can see the dimensions on everything. Because the dimensions, as they relate to the hook, is what really makes this fly easy to tie or makes it very difficult to tie. And this isn't going to come out exactly like a dry fly should, because like I say, it's on a stinger hook. And it's got a longer shaft than what a dry fly hook would have for the bend that it's got. But this is so you can get the idea. Basically, this is a size 4 stinger hook, like I say. And I'm going to tie both flies, the big one and the little one, basically the same. I'm going to use the same techniques and same thread and everything. And right now I'm going to start off with a 210 denier deer hair thread. I'm going to tie a green. If you notice, it's a green humpy. I'm going to tie it with green thread. And this thread I'll use on the size 16 hook just as well as I'm using it on this hook. I use it on all my other hooks. And whatever color deer hair or whatever color deer hair thread you can use is what you can use to make your fly with. So, like I say, the dimensions are key. And I'm going to start off basically by splitting this hook pretty much in the middle. And I'm going to start my thread. I'm going to take it back just to the bend. I think that's probably about where the bend is. Bring my thread back forward. This is about as exciting as regular deer hair, so if anyone wants to gnaw it off. The tail is moose body. It's really stiff. And if you do this right, if you're frugal like I am, I'm going to pull out the shorter hairs, and I may have enough to do another fly with those shorter hairs. There's a lot of the underfur in here is just really, really, really nasty, so you really have to get it out of there because I want this to stack. Now obviously the first thing that's going on is the tail, and this dimension is critical. This is the end of my hook, and this is my eye. I'm gonna grab this right here, and I'm gonna cut that right where the eye of that hook is. And you see my thread's about halfway up on that shaft of that hook. Kind of measure it. Pretty close. I'm going to put this, and I've actually, if I can do this without moving stuff around, I'm going to do that. I'm actually going to put this on with the pinch method. And I'm going to not release it. I'm just going to simply start wrapping my green thread back. I want this to go on as smooth as I can because this is making my underlayer. And when I'm done, it's going to have an effect on how the fly actually looks. I'm going to take it back to where I started my thread. I'm going to put on some loose. Everything was tight up to this point. Now I'm going to put on a couple of loose wraps to kind of hold everything in place. I'm going to bring it back forward and I'm going to put tight wraps on it again. Bring it back forward. So you see my tail's on there. Once again, it's the same length as the shaft of this hook. Next thing that's going to go on is basically the wings up front and the shell back for the fly. And this hair is actually for Humpies. It's got what we call a short tip, and it's also long enough for me to put it on here and tie it in basically at the butts and bring it back up, and it'll make my wing. And I'm going to use the same hair for the size 16 hook as I'm using for this big hook. Grab it by the tips, you can see about how much hair I've got. And I'm going to do this just like I would the deer hair, but I don't see my brush in front of me, so I'm just going to whip on it. Pull out as much underfur as I possibly can. And I want this to be even to make the wing, so I'm going to put it in here and stack it. Let's set these aside because I'm going to use these on my next fly, just to show that I am really frugal. You see my tips are all even. I've got some short stuff in here. I'm going to try and remove that short stuff if I can. That's my next measurement. I want this to be the same length as I'm going to measure to the end of the tail, and then to the eye of the hook up here. And I'm actually going to take this and nip it right there. I'm going to thin it out just a little bit. I'm going to set it right down. I'm going to try and do this without letting go of everything because it makes it easier if you can do it that way. Even it one more time. Set it right on top of this, right on top of the tail. My thread goes around. I'm going to kind of flare it and pull down. Oops. Kind of gather that together. Now I'm going to flare it. I'll keep it from wrapping around down on the bottom. I'm going to just start wrapping my thread back to tie that down. Once again, I'm holding that just as tight as I can to keep it from spinning around on the hook. Is everyone still awake? Can you see what I'm doing? I think I've taken that out to the tail. I'm going to raise that up a little bit and see. I'm going to start wrapping back. See, and I want this to be even on the bottom. This will be my final wrap, so I'm going to take my time to wrap it back. So I make sure everything's covered up on the bottom. Not that it really makes any difference to anyone but me, but I'm going to try and tie some of this down without going over the edge of the hook. Advance my thread a little bit. If I can do this without letting go and pull this up, everything is the right length. Where you can see I pulled everything up except for that tail. I'm going to pull this forward, and I'm going to tie this down. As I tie it down, I'm actually going to hold it up, so I'm going to try and keep that hair from wrapping around down on the side. And pull it down into place with my thread. myself a little maneuvering room back here for my hackle, and raise this up. And bring my thread forward. I'll build a little dam underneath that wing to help hold that wing up. And once again, this is going to looks kind of funny on this hook because this isn't really a dry fly hook. It looks like the nose is way too long, and in reality it is, but you have to do it with this hook in order to show you how it's going to work on the other hook. I've got one little hair here that's coming undone. Now I could actually finish this off with this deer hair thread on this big hook. I'm not going to.
What is a deer hair thread?
It's thicker thread. This is a 210 denier. I'm actually going to finish it off with an 8/0 thread. And basically, if you do this, they'll tell you to put like floss on the bottom. But this works really well as far as I'm concerned. So I'm going to take. I brought my thread forward a little bit. If I want to, and put a half hitch on this. Set it right there, and I'm going to bring my thread back. I'm going to start this is my 8/0 thread. I'm going to put a thread base on here for the hackle. What I'm going to do is I'm going to wrap this up over that deer hair thread, and I'm going to cut it off. That way I don't have to worry about putting any big knots in it or anything. Remove my tag end. This isn't like real deer hair. I can't. Sometimes I can shake when I do deer hair and you can't tell it, but when you're using this small stuff, you can see me shake. Okay, I'm going to pull this forward. I'm going to put some thread wraps up here, because that's where I'm going to tie down my hackle. Now the next thing is, this is probably the most difficult part of this fly for me, and that's splitting these hairs, making the actual wings. So I'm going to kind of separate it, and I'm going to spread them out so I can kind of separate it as even as I can with my bodkin. Got to kind of work with it a little bit. See if it looks like it's coming out even. I'm going to throw some figure eights in here. I realize you can't see what I'm doing, but I think you can visualize it. If you've tied flies, I'm going to put 4 wraps on there. Kind of separate it. Put 4 wraps on this side. Sometimes you can kind of use your fingers or your fingernails to help guide that thread if you have to. Kind of turn this from the camera so now you can kind of see what I've got. Bring my thread back up around. I'm actually going to post these wings. So I want my thread to be kind of loose. So I'll make sure it's long, so I can wrap it around here and try and make that climb up that hair without flaring it. It's much easier to do on this hook than it is on the little bitty hook, but I'm going to do the other side. Once again, I've made my thread a little bit longer so I can wrap it around without having to pull it tight. Tighten down my vise. Okay, now you can see basically what I've got and how I've posted those. See how that's coming out. turn it so everybody can see what's going on here. Yeah, I think I've got some hackle picked out that'll work with this already. Once again, this is a pretty big hook. That's almost right. I prep my hackle. Get that down to where my stem can bend with this. Make my little 5 o'clock shadow. I don't know if you can hear my stomach growling over there or not. Okay, I'm going to set this and put my thread back up behind the wing. And to me it doesn't make any difference the curve of the feather, where it goes on like this or like this. I'm sure there's a lot of people that would vary with that, but I do want to try and have it so it started like this. Okay, I've got started, and I'm going to pull my wings back, and I can see that the base of that thread in there, or not the thread, that base of that feather in there, and I'm going to pull it forward and tie it down also. So now that, and advance my thread to the front of the hook. So now that feather's been tied in, not only here, but it's also tied in on the bottom of the hook. So hopefully it won't come out. And I'm just going to run my hackle forward. It looks like my feathers should be long enough to put 4 in the back and some up front, but you can see my nose is pretty long up front. Pull that forward. I'll kind of spread this out a little bit to make it go all the way up. Tie it off. And once again, it looks kind of funny on this longer hook, but those are the dimensions you need for that smaller hook also. Put a whip finish on it. And we'll put a little bit of head cement on it. When I do my fly tying with my deer hair, I probably when I use this for size 16 or 18 or 20 hooks also, which I do. And you'll see when we build the size 16 Humpy that I can put this head cement right on the very front of it like this and without getting anything in the eye. So that's a 4/0 Humpy. You want to pass that around real quick, and then then you'll see I'm going to use exactly the same dimensions to make the little bitty one as I did that one. And I have no idea if that will catch fish or not. Probably throw it at bass and it'll take it. I assume it will because it's made out of deer hair.
Anything that doesn't use deer hair?
Yeah. In fact, I tie some foam stuff that works really well. It's indestructible. I'm going to put this next one is going to be on a size 16 hook. Dry fly hook. You'll see it'll be the same dimensions as what I used for this big hook. I personally like straight eyes, especially for something like this, or my elk hair caddis and stuff. I just prefer the straight eye hook, and it works real well for this. oops, I'm going to change vices. This vise won't hold that. Won't hold that little bitty hook. This is actually the vise I started tying my deer hair with. Different jaws, but it's the same vise. Make sure it's on there tight.
What hook is that?
This is a, I think it's probably a 101 TMCO straight eye dry fly hook, and it is a size 16. Thought about putting it on a 14, but that would be cheating. So, and once again, I'm going to put this on the same thread. This is my Flymaster Plus 210 denier dry fly, or not dry fly, deer hair hook or deer hair thread. Any color thread that you can get, you can use for the bottom of your fly. I just happen to like fluorescent green or lime green, however you want to say that, just because I think it's kind of an attractant. And this is my go-to dry fly to start off with. So, okay, once again, the dimensions are the same. I'm going to start this basically in the center of the hook. Wrap my thread back. It's a little harder to pull on my thread with this little bitty hook, so it can have a tendency to bend things. And I'm back about to where the bend of the hook starts. So bring my thread back forward. Nip my thread. Oops, I lost my basket when I moved my... Now, this is the hair that I pulled off of the other one, where I pulled the underfur out of. So I'm going to kind of manipulate it a little bit and pull more underfur out of it, set it down. Pull more underfur out, set it down, and this is going to be the tail for my second fly.
That's deer hair then?
This is moose body.
Moose body. Okay.
Moose body.
Okay.
In fact, when I happened to buy this particular piece of moose body because it's so straight. And like I say, I do fish with humpies, so I can't say I tie lots of humpies, but I do tie these humpies. So I'll buy the piece of, yeah, Montana.
Colorado.
Fish in Bennett Springs.
Okay.
Taneycomo, Yellowstone. I fished them on Mill Creek up in Livingston area. It's just kind of my go-to fly.
Bad neighborhoods.
Yeah, yeah. There's a flat one in here. I'm going to pull that flat one out. Not that it makes any difference to anyone else but me. And I'm going to stack it just like I did before. It's pretty even already, but I actually have a smaller stacker at home that I use for something like this, but I'm going to thin this out a little bit because the fly's quite a bit smaller.
So how many do you have? Maybe half a dozen at the most?
Yeah.
Okay.
Might be 9 or 10. Once again, I'm going to measure this. I want it to be the same length as the shaft of that hook. So I'm going to end up cutting it and pinch it right here and cut it right in front of where I'm pinching it. I'm going to set it down. I'm going to use that pinch method just like I did before. Captures that. I'm snickering a little. I'm trying to keep this thread as tight as I can without popping the thread, but in reality I'm trying to keep it as tight as I can without bending the hook. Again, I'm getting back towards the back, so I'm going to put on some loose wraps because I don't want the flare on me. I want it to stay in basically one spot. And those loose wraps will do that. I'm going to bring it back forward. So you can see right now basically everything's the same. It's just tiny. So again, I'm going to take it's the same piece of hair I used for the big hook. And this is different. This hair is different than the hair I would use for spinning. Put my basket back. Let me get rid of the under fur. I don't have my cat brush here with me. I'm gonna get rid of the under fur. I'm gonna thin this out just a little bit. I'm gonna make sure I've got everything basically the same length first. Once again, everything's exactly the same, even though it's just a smaller hook. I'm gonna thin this out just a little bit more. I'm going to measure it. So again, the measurement's going to be exactly the same. I want it to be the length of the shaft of that hook back to the end of the tail. So I'm going to end up cutting that hair basically right here. And if I do this right, I can put this on here and be able to pull it up forward without grabbing stuff on the tail. Oops, let me do something different here. Kind of wrapping that around that hair, see if I can keep it from going over the hook. Flaring it, putting a couple wraps back up front, and I'm going to take it back. And I'm trying to hold that hair right on top of the hook if I can. I think I've taken it back as far as I need to go. See, I want this to be nice and even on the bottom as I go forward. Oops, just dropped it around. Pulled too tight. I'm going to raise this up. If you can see, I'm pulling it up separate from the tail. Probably see it better on the camera than you guys can see it sitting there, but because of the length, how the length of the hair and everything's cut, I can just pull that up without pulling on the tail. So you can see how everything comes out. Kind of even that butt back up a little bit if I can. Once again, I'm pulling up on the hair. I'm not trying to lay that hair down on the hook. I'm pulling up on the hair and I'm pulling it down onto the hook with the thread. I'm trying to do it without bending the hook. Raise it up. You probably can't really see what I'm doing here, but I'm building that dam back up underneath the bottom of it. Try and tighten up that thread a little bit. And I'm going to bring my thread back just like I did before. my 8/0 thread, bring it back, cut the tag end off the 8/0 thread, cut my deer hair thread, I've seen what it looks like on the bottom, but it's too late to do anything anyway, so build that dam up just a little bit more. Bring my wing forward. So I can wrap my thread over the green to prepare for splitting the wing up. Everyone can see what I've got. I don't know if you can see it or not. Can you see what I've got?
Your shirt's the right color, I can see it.
Can you? Good.
So I can see the.
So you can see what I've got, and you can see it's basically the same thing I had with the big fly. Well, it's just a little one. I'm gonna split it. Turn this a little bit so I can see it myself. This is harder to split just because it's so hard, just because it's so little, I guess. It's hard for me to tell if I've got it even or not. And I think probably this small, it probably doesn't make that much difference, but I really can't see this because I'm blocking the camera, but I'm using my fingers to help guide that thread. So if you got a lot of rough fingernails, it might make it tough. Try and turn this a little bit more so the camera might be able to see it, but I'm going to separate this side. Once again, everything's exactly the same as I did on that big hook. You can kind of see where I'm using my fingers to help guide that thread down there. If you had rough fingers, it might make that a little more difficult. But now you can see what I've got without posting the wings. Bring my thread back up over. Once again, I'm going to make my thread long so I don't have to make it tight. I'm going to post each one of those wings. Bring it around. Post one on my side. Post that without grabbing the eye of the hook. Pull it up and then you can see basically what I've got. It's been posted. It's something I didn't do on the bigger hook that I should have. I'm actually going to drop a little head cement on here to help hold those posts in place. And I should have done that on the big one also. Okay. This is my hackle. It's about the right size. I'm going to prep it just like I did the big feather. Put my little 5 o'clock shadow on it. Gene, I'm sure you probably can't see that in the camera, but
Is that just along the shaft, just so it hooks the thread?
yeah, I'm just leaving little barbules on there.
Right.
You would know what the 5 o'clock shadow's like, right? No,
3 day.
3 day. This isn't quite a 3-day shadow, but it's just enough to help grab that thread. So again, I'm gonna lay it on there. I've got my thread already behind the wings. If anyone wants to come up and look, that's fine, because it's pretty small, but you
Right
see,
to the center.
yes, I'm,
Or behind.
actually I'm going behind, but I'm
Right.
trying to lay it so it's already started in the right direction.
Correct.
Oops.
It's nice to have a light background, isn't it?
Yeah, works real well. I may grab more than I wanted to right there, but okay, I'm gonna pull my wing back
Catch it on the front.
and catch it on the front.
So it doesn't make any difference as to which, the shiny side or the flat side,
To me, it doesn't make any difference. I
as
don't,
to which wood, which
I'm sure it
wood.
does to a lot of people, but to me, it just,
Do the hackles lay the same basically then? I mean, given the direction.
yeah,
that
they're
you
just
said.
gonna go straight out.
Okay.
There are some tires who literally will weave this, who will make it so that it is, AK Best will tie this thing so that, I'll do it after I put this on, I'll show you with my fingers. Oops, I'll do it now. He doesn't put it on so everything's straight like this, he puts it on so the hackles are all like this. You know, so they go all over the place. And it actually makes the fly, I think it makes the fly stand up better.
Some things don't change. Just can't remember it all. What have you been doing, bud?
Pull my wing back and pull this forward. Oops.
Tell anybody about it, Terry, then it's gonna kill you.
Is that California deer?
No, it's,
Just,
I'm not sure. I know it's made, it's actually says humpy hair on the back of
oh,
it.
it does?
Yeah.
Okay, cause it's got a finer texture.
Yeah, it's got a finer texture to it.
Okay.
It's got longer tips. Somehow I've gathered that wing up here and I'm not sure what I've done.
Where are you on vehicle now? You did.
And you can see on the back of my flag, you actually see some of that green stuff, so I didn't quite take my final wraps on that hump back quite far enough, but
Fish don't care.
most fish won't look at the back of that fly anyway and say, oops, don't want that one.
I took it out there. I haven't taken this one up, although I've tried to get it up this car, and it worked, so I don't. Just let it see. Just sit out with a piece of crap metal on my head, 'cause it had something to do with it. But anyways, I was looking at what I was saying. They make
Gotta hold everything tight.
there's a wireless rear view camera. Jeff is gonna be afraid about that, trying to figure out how to do that. If you get a camera on a Toyota, I saw that, and that's really cool.
Let me get some of these off.
Anyway, you have to have a brake on, but then that's what it's wireless, but on a Toyota,
I decided to stop putting on my cheaters.
if you get it, it can take you down.
That's pretty impressive. And once again, this is my, and put that head cement right there on the end of that. About getting in the eye of the hook.
Oh, especially with that weapon in my camera or something, I may just get this for the camera.
And that's it. Size 16 humpy.
Orange bottom would be good too.
Yeah, yeah, orange.
Orange and green.
And I say you can use
black
you
even.
can use any color you want to. I've tied them actually with peacock curl before. So you can pass both of them around.
I like the humpy thing, so I need to get some of that kind of hair then.
Anyone have any questions at all? I mean, to me it's a neat fly to fish.
You'll throw the
What,
It can't-
what other variations would you do? I mean, the same technique, using the same technique, you'd use peacock curl for body, or for the color.
Yeah, you can use any color you want to.
Or
I'd
you
use
can
peacock curl.
for the hump.
Yeah, you
Well,
could.
then it becomes something else.
Yeah, but then you can't use that peacock curl to make the wing.
Right.
Now some will make a wolf humpy, where they tie the hump portion. They'll tie the hump portion of the fly and they'll basically cut everything off up here, and then they'll put on calf tail for wings, or they'll put on
Now, which
some-
one's that?
could be a wolf. I guess it'd be tied like a wolf humpy.
Now, when you're
So
wrapping your
actually, you
body,
can cut that off and use anything you want to for the wings.
when you're wrapping your body with the green thread,
Yeah.
do you ever unwrap it to where you can flatten it out? Would that help for?
On the bigger fly, it would.
Okay,
On the smaller one,
it wouldn't make a difference.
yeah, I don't think it
Oh,
makes that much
unwrapped, you mean
difference.
to widen it.
Yeah, widen the
out.
thread.
Oh, okay.
That's something you can experiment with, kind of play with. And when I put it on, it's not tight and it's not loose. It's just kind of basically right in the middle, so it lays out. Because I'm actually, once again, it doesn't make a squat bit of difference to the fish. I'm trying to make it flat on the bottom and smooth.
You throw 16 at Bennett then?
Yeah.
16 and smaller?
And I've never tried to tie them smaller. I can't tell you.
16, okay.
16's about.
Looks
Six, I
perfect,
tie them
yeah.
all in 16s and 14s.
That way you at least see them.
Then you can look through my box when you want to, and we're done. I don't know if I can hold that so the camera can. So the camera can see them or not, but they pretty much come out the same. So that's it. Y'all don't have any questions, I'm gonna take the rest of the day off. Anything else you might wanna see? We've got
What else do we want to see?
time. I've done this, I don't have the stuff right here.
Did you ever do a double humpy or?
No, I've never tried it, that scares me.
Oh.
I mean, if you look at it, that would work.
Well, this is natural, I don't know, something, but it looks awfully fine. It's not very dark on the ends.
That would work.
Is that
That'd
comparative?
make any
Yeah.
difference, yes, compared down
That's
here.
what I've used on mine.
Yeah.
It's
It
very
bends
much-
easy, it looks like that's what you need.
That's basically what, well, it's not quite as, it's a little longer than compared down here, but it's
Yeah.
basically the same thing.
That would work.
It's just as longer.
Okay.
If you're gonna try smaller flies, you can see I'm cutting the majority of that off anyway for tying 16s or 8 or 14s or something. That stuff would work really good.
101s.
Yeah.
Let's see, I've got
I like the
thread.
101 because I like that straight eye.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, the one
might
for
For me, it's
white.
easier to tie off.
The white and the red. Have you, where would you use that?
Coordinating.
I've used those at Bennett Springs
Oh, have
too.
you? That's kind of neat.
Should stop.
Salmon eggs.
Uh-huh. You see the salmon eggs?
Yeah.
My dad used to like to fish with those because, I mean, you can put a little weight on your line and cast them out just like a little flag waving back and forth up there. Eat me. Eat me. I mean, he used to catch fish after fish after fish on those things.
And you put a little hot
Now,
spot
obviously,
in
I've tied some in black. I've got right next to my crickets.
it. Ooh, those would be good. Or bluegill.
Yeah. Oh, and here, see, these are tied with